What is up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching part 6 of the Footsies fighting game fundamentals. It's a series in which we talk about fighting games and fighting game design and how to get better as a fighting game player from the ground up. It's a really unique opportunity for anybody, any level of player, any level of experience with video games to jump in, try their hand at it, get some feedback, fill out a survey, and kind of learn what the heck's going on with fighting games. So this is part 6 in the series. If you're curious, there's a link in the description. It's on this file. You can start here. You can zoom in with the scroll wheel and go through the steps yourself. It involves downloading the game, which is free, playing the game, taking the survey, and then watching these videos. Right now we are on the final step, extracting lessons, and we are basically listening to videos of other fighting game players and organizing their comments into based on what we learned, right? We learned there's certain ways that people learn. We learned that there's certain ways that fighting games work, and we explained all that theory. But now we're looking at what actual players say and seeing how their comments line up with what we've discovered. And as you can see here, we have 70. We've currently gone over in this video series so far 73 some odd different quotes from different players of different fighting games, all top players, all very insightful. So some of the topics we have are displayed here, which we've already gone over. There's some ones specific to learning, ones specifically on improving, and some specifically on how fighting games work. So that's what we've been doing, and I thought 74 would be a good amount, but I keep listening to more and more players. I love digging in and listening to more players, and I keep finding more quotes. So we're just going to go over another set of quotes, hopefully about 30 of them. So we'll see how it goes. Here's one right here. There we go.
I'm doing it to observe my opponent. So if I'm watching a lot of times when I watch demos, I'm doing it to observe my opponent. So if I'm watching Navi or whatever, I want to make sure I understand all the spots they're playing and the style of default they have, right? So if I'm watching a demo like Train, like what style of default do they have? How often do they send 3 Ivy early to op pick it to try to get a pick Ivy? How often are they taking Brown Hall control? How much noise do they make when they make Brown Hall control? When I say noise, I mean what nades are they throwing, right? It encapsulates a lot. How do they hold T mid? How much do they fight for T mid, etc. Takes me like 5-10 minutes to just look at one demo's T side. Do that for another demo. Takes like 20 or 30 minutes to watch like 2 or 3 T sides by fast forwarding through the useless eco rounds and stuff like that. Look for the key stuff. Boom, T side, CT side. I want to see spots. I want to see rotations. I want to see how they play with certain utility. So I have double ops. How do they play? Single op. How do they play? What's their most common setup? Single op. Okay. What's the 2 most common setups they play? How do they set up when they play 4 outside? How do they set up when they play 3 outside? Boom, boom, boom. Notes, notes, notes. 3 demos ish. Go through it. Notes, notes, notes. Both sides. That's it for like a quick review, right?
So he's talking about reviewing other people's video footage of how they play Counter-Strike Go. And he's a top player. He's also a coach. So it's like, this is what I look for when I look for videos. And he just starts listing a ton of details, right? One thing that I tried to iterate before in my video series, the fundamentals of game design, is that the fundamentals of all design is about how you handle details. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot more details than you think, and what separates great designers and great artists and great accomplishers from others is that they pay attention to more details. And the more details you pay attention to, the more you can learn about how each specific detail affects the end result that you're looking for, and the better you can manipulate what you're doing to achieve whatever result you want. That's just how it works. So just listening to him rattle off a bunch of details, it's like, oh, yeah, that's a lot of stuff. He just went la 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 for like 30 seconds. But at the very end, it's just something I wanted you to pay attention to. He was like, he's a top level player, he's a top level coach, and even when he's preparing for his when he's reviewing footage and preparing to improve himself, he takes notes. He said, do all the stuff, check all the stuff, notes, 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 and then I check all the stuff, notes, 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 as in it's assumed that he is writing notes. Take a listen.
Demos ish. Go through it. Notes, notes, notes. Both sides. That's it for like a quick review, right? Guys, a lot of times when I watch demos, when they play 4 outside, how they set up when they play 3 outside. Boom, boom, boom. Notes, notes, notes. 3 demos ish. Go through it. Notes, notes, notes. Both.
See, he said notes, notes, notes twice. So like it's obviously something that he does a lot. So do not underestimate the power of taking notes. There is really nothing in human history and nothing in neurobiology that that says that people work best by not taking notes. It just doesn't make sense, right? We've achieved what we have achieved in society because we are able to better communicate. We are able to better communicate because we could use language. We use language and spread it better by writing it down. We help ourselves both remember and convey accurate information across people by writing things down, but that also works internally, right? That's just how it works. It's the history, it's the science. There's really no arguing against it. So if you're just still like, I don't want to take notes, just know that you're wrong. That's all I have to say. Like, people can get by without it, but it's not a matter of like, is it possible to hit the right buttons on the video game controller without taking notes? It's your brain works a very specific way. You can test it right now. Like, just try to remember a string of 20 random digits and then try to remember them when you write them down and can reference what you've written. It's a completely different experience, and that happens anytime that the information you're thinking about exceeds your working memory capacity, which is really small. So at almost every time you're thinking or studying or observing, notes will help you, like, guaranteed. So stop arguing with me. All right. So that was quote number 74. I really like that he said notes, notes, notes. Let's go to quote 75. Same dude. And I like how, so we're dipping a little bit into the first-person shooter territory, Counter-Strike coach, but yeah, when it lines up, it lines up.
You're watching pros, you don't know the meta, you haven't competed at the meta, you're not going to compete against them right now. Maybe you will in the future if you're skilled, you might get to that point. What you need to be looking for is anything and everything that can illuminate your understanding of the game. So the hard thing is this, right? Whenever you want to learn, you need to hear, you need to see, you need to experience, right? So hearing is the same thing as is someone having a mentor and tell you. That's the hard thing to have, right? Not everyone has a mentor. Seeing is visually seeing, reading, or in some sense, yeah, visually seeing or reading about, right? So watching a demo, and then you're watching pros.
Cool. So really right here, I put this quote in between these two, but really it should be one here and one here, just to be a little less confusing. And he's talking about learning, right? So this is our learning thing. We're gonna quote. So he's saying hearing, seeing, and doing, right? So he's really talking about how seeing is an important part of your learning process and doing things. And, you know, it doesn't say much to say that you have to go hands-on with something in order to learn how to go hands-on and do something. So that's not saying much, but it is interesting how he's framing it in terms of hearing, seeing, and doing, right? So I'll play it again.
You don't know the meta. You haven't.
So he's saying if you look at a videotape of other top level players, you're not going to be looking and observing and learning the same things that he's learning because you don't have the experience or the knowledge. And essentially, for a fighting game, if you don't have the strategy space familiar with it, if you don't have it worked out for yourself, you're going to see people do stuff and you're not going to understand why they do stuff. Listen to this guy.
Competed at the meta, you're not going to compete against them right now. Maybe you will in the future if you're skilled, you might get to that point. What you need to be looking for is anything and everything that can illuminate your understanding of the game. So the hard.
So when you look at other people play, you're not supposed to be looking for specific combos they do. You're not supposed to be looking for specific tricks necessarily, or how copying how they move. You're supposed to be looking at what they do will tell you, will inspire you basically to look at the game in new ways. So if somebody uses like a flashbang grenade or something in a way you never thought of, that's illuminating part of the game. Like, I never thought grenades could be used like this, and now you have a new category. It's up to you to go afterwards and fill in that category with your own personal experiences and build out your strategy space now that you know that that's a good place to explore. Same with fighting games. Like, you see somebody use like Mario's Fireball for edge guarding, and you're like, I didn't know that dinky little thing could be used for that, but that's interesting, and that should open up a new category, and that's something that you should explore later. So that's what it means by illuminating part of the game, and really we can chuck that up to curiosity, right? Something that gives you a little bit more, I'm just going to check this quote over here too. This is a really good quote.
Hard thing is this, right? Whenever you want to learn, you need to hear, you need to see, you need to experience, right? So hearing is the same thing as is someone having a mentor and tell you. That's the hard thing to have, right? Not every.
Yeah, so he's saying, like, he's basically saying you need to start off with some good scaffolding, right? It doesn't really help to just blindly go into everything. There's a lot of wasted time and space you could invest in learning something. So getting a coach is recommended, right? Getting a mentor, but essentially being illuminated about the game in constructive ways. We're going to chalk that up to curiosity a little bit here to help motivate you on that first step.
Everyone has a mentor. Seeing is visually seeing, reading, or in some sense, visually seeing or reading about, right? So watching a demo. And then you're watching pros, you don't know the meta, you haven't competed.
Cool. So that's, we're going to put that here. Yeah, so he's just saying it's more than just looking at good players and copying what they do. The world's complex because we can't just observe each other and copy what they do and achieve the same results. Strategy is complex because it involves a lot of complexity, right? We have all that complexity marked here in every single move and every single thing. You just got to learn all this complexity. But we also have it to where the why, like the complexity in action, the complexity in context is also complex. It's not just a matter of memorizing a lot of basic facts. It's about having a lot of the experience and the know-how to understand how the information fits together. Cool. Let's go to 76. All right, here.
Something, but the problem is if you only watch, you're not hearing why they do that, you're not learning why they do that, and you're only seeing why they do it, and then you have to put it into action, right? So you can't really put it into action. So the toughest part about that middle ground of getting better at CS is you don't really have an environment to do it. So the way a lot of amateurs get better is by being introspective people and reflective people, right? If you just go watch a demo and expect to be able to repeat what he's doing and put it in a game, you're still missing the context of why he did it, even if you repeat it. So in order to understand the context, you got to understand the pro level of play. How will you understand that by just watching? You won't. You have to be in it, either experiencing it or hearing it from somebody else. So the only way to get to it, like I said, is to be reflective. And you're still not going to get there. But the way that you get there by being reflective is at every stage when your skill and mechanics are improving through what? Through repetition, aim training, DM, which only does this part of it. You're coupling that with reflecting on what you do versus and also seeing what you're learning by watching demos. And then you hope to inch a little forward. Now, one thing, but the problem is it's
cool. There's a lot of information there, but he's saying you have to watch your own matches, right? He's saying that if you watch better players, you have to be careful not to just copy them. That's kind of what we were just talking about. He's saying your actual growth is going to be inches, small little things, and it's always going to be relative to what you understand now. It's always going to be based on what you do now, based on your own experiences. And again, a lot of that is just reflecting what we already know about my CPTM learning system, your curiosity, but everything is based on your own experience, and everything is built off of and scaffolded back onto your own experiences. So as soon as you have a gap in experience, like a pro level versus you when you're an amateur, that's too big of an experience leap. You can't attach things to pro level execution. So you always have to bring it down to your level, and you're not going to make any fundamental jump or any monumental leap. It's going to be a small, tiny, like maybe I should wait slightly before going out. Maybe I should slightly tilt my stick when I hold a grenade. And like just tiny little things like that are going to start adding up.
If you only watch, you're not hearing why they do that, you're not learning why they do that, and you're only seeing why they do it, and then you have...
Yeah, so he's saying the why in terms of, you can always see the what. You can pretty much always see the who, like, oh, there's a player, his name's this, or her name's that, or whatever. Like, you can see the who, what, where, what the map is, when. You can, timing-wise, you can see, like, oh, the match is 5 minutes in, or whatever. Like, all that's fairly straightforward, but the how and why are always the more complicated ones, and the why can be practically invisible, not only because you don't know enough, but because there are things that you can't know based on watching video of a video game. Like, you can't know what's in their head, can't know what they're thinking, and there's a lot of other details that are important.
You have to put it into action, right? So you can't really put it into action. So the toughest part about that middle ground of getting better at CS is you don't really have an environment to do it. So the way a lot of amateurs get better is by being introspective people and
he also mentioned that a learning environment is important, which is him acknowledging that there's multiple key components. One key component here is being introspective, right? which is being reflective or basically analyzing your own matches, right? That's kind of what this quote's here, but this also in the CPTM system in the game I built, Enlighten, there was an entire mode for observing your own notes. So you play you have all access to all these different modes, so you can go to where you're curious. You can play the game, and as you play the game, you can take notes and other things. But then there's a whole mode where you're just supposed to look at your notes and observe your own thoughts and process them, right? That is a huge part of the game that I made, Enlighten. Learn the Art of Learning, which I can show you right here. That's a big part of the game, and it's because that's where strategy is actually formed. Like, you don't get better at games by just playing a lot, getting angry that you lose, feeling good that you win, and just kind of like pushing it out of your head and going on to the next one. You get better by being curious, going hands-on, getting experience and perceiving the situation, having thoughts, and then processing those thoughts. Like, it has to happen. You have to be introspective. There is no other way around it. But yeah, this is my game. If you want to find out more about Enlighten, it's a game that basically teaches and walks you through and helps you explore the learning process, all while playing this really simple puzzle game. It's free. It's PC only. And if you're really curious on how any of these learning steps work, like, Enlighten will walk you through it. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. Anyone can play it. But the wall that people hit, and when they stop playing the game because, they can't get better, it's the same wall that they're going to hit playing a fighting game, playing Counter-Strike, playing anything that requires them to build strategy, because this step right here is it's not a very intuitive step for people who just play games all day, right? And if people really believe that they're going to improve by playing a lot, then they are going to miss this key fact that I'm telling you right now, this key reality about learning.
Reflective people, right? If you just go watch a demo and expect to be able to repeat what he's doing and put it in a game, you're still missing the context of why he did it, even if you repeat it. So in order to understand the context, you got to understand the pro level of play. How will you understand that by just watching? You won't. You have to be in it, either experiencing it or hearing it from somebody else. So the only
so like a coach or the player has to break it down for you to understand what the context is. Or you got to just get in the game and play and be like, that's the context.
The way to get to it, like I said, is to be reflective. And you're still not going to get there. But the way that you get there...
So even if you get a coach being like, this is what the pros do, it's still not going to jump you up in levels. You're going to improve by inches.
By being reflective is at every stage when your skill and mechanics are improving, through what? Through repetition, aim training, DM, which only does this part of it. You're coupling that with reflecting on what you do versus, and also seeing what you're learning by watching demos. And then you hope...
I love that, reflecting on what you do, right? So you can't reflect on what you do unless you watch what you do. It's very, very straightforward, but it's amazing how many people will gloss over that.
Hope to inch a little forward. Now, one thing...
Cool, you inch. Got it. It's a great quote. We're going to go on the next one. This guy's quotes are a little dense, so, like, bear with me. Now we're back in Smash Land.
You need to watch replays, like, for sure. Like, when you find moments you're having trouble learning, or you find there's just something you don't know about, watching replays is key, both of yourself, because you need to see where your own issues are, but of other people. And
wait a minute, it's like he just said what the other guy said, but for a completely different game and from a completely different person. Yeah, it's because it's the truth.
It's actually funny. I think you want to learn really well. A good thing to do is to watch replays of someone else, but the people try and talk to that person and, like, discuss matches with them and hope they can watch your replays, because it's so much easier to see someone else's mistakes than your own, because most likely you're doing things for a reason in a matchup, right? Unless it's like a very obvious, like, dropping combos or something. Sometimes you might be like, this seems good, and then someone's like, oh man, I want to do that. So and then there's also just learn from other people.
Yeah, so not only is he saying you should reflect on yourself, but one of the best ways to spot your mistakes is to have other people have an extra pair of eyes on you, right? There is no aspect of... I'll show you again, like, more and more of my stuff. Let me type in communal, design-oriented .net/communal learning. So this is a style of learning that we have explored, defined, and continue to work with here at designoriented.net. And it's basically like we learn better together, and here's why. Here's exactly how we do it. Here's exactly the structures, the philosophy behind it. Here's some of the details behind it. Here's the history of it. And we do it here at Design Oriented. We did it at the Smash Dojo. We did it at the Mario Maker Workshop. We did it with Enlightened, the game I just told you about. We did it with Drawn Together. And like all these different examples of how we're applying it to real learning environments and situations. But essentially, people are powerful. And if you put them in the right configuration and use them for the right purposes, they help tremendously when learning. So if you want to just go into a cave and shut yourself off from the world and lab a bunch of stuff and come back out, there are benefits to that, but there are also cons. There's pros and cons. And a well-rounded approach would involve some of that, and also playing players, talking to players, watching each other's footage, and really just getting that holistic, well-rounded environment for learning. That's why in Enlighten, one of the key features is being able to browse the notes of your friends and copy their notes into your system and really just get different perspectives on the same content, the same puzzle challenges. Let me see if I can get it. Yeah, you make notes on the side, and when you're looking through your notes, you can edit them, you can even browse your friends' notes, stuff like that, right? Like, it's super important. The Buzz lays it out very clearly. Top level Smash player. We can move on now.
Type thing. I also think, we definitely talk about this directly, but playing with people and talking about matches with people, having people bounce ideas, basically just people. People interact with people when improving is the most important thing for sure. You need to be able to share your knowledge with other people if you want to grow quickly, especially.
Yeah.
Because you can just go to Elite Smash and play and you will get better. But are you going to get better relative to people around you? Especially if they're competitive? Definitely not.
Yeah. 2 brains is better than 1, right? So imagine what 10 brains of people trying to get better at the same character could do.
Exactly.
Exactly, right. It's very clear. We don't have to go over that one, but it does remind me of the quote Daigo we went over in the previous video, which I can just remind you here.
8パターン教えちゃうと勝てなくなっちゃうからね。まあね。
So he's like, if you reveal your strategies, aren't you going to be harder to win? I
そうなっちゃう。
said,
そうなんだ
yes.
けど。
Yes, that's simple.
でもまあ別に
But the good thing about strategies is that they're still effective when they're revealed, and you make the community stronger and you work together. That's essentially what he says. So like, oh wow, like 2 different people, 1 Japanese, 1... Daigo's much older than the Buzz. I'm going to say he's, I don't want to say he's double his age, but Daigo's in his 40s, right? And the Buzz, he's younger than me. So he might be in his late 20s. So, they're a very different age group, with Japanese and American, and yet they're all talking about the same thing. I wonder why. Because it's the truth. Moving on.
There's one exception. If you're playing a character like Ganondorf, a bottom tier character.
Yeah, that's on you.
Okay, that's a joke, but at the same time, improving with characters like that who are really bad is hard, and generally it's easier to improve when you have more tools to improve with.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just because you think you might improve faster by handicap yourself with a lower bottom tier, they just have to work harder to improve, therefore you get better.
Mm-hmm.
It actually doesn't work like that, and I'd say you're going to improve the most when you play those good characters, those high tiers.
Yeah.
Maybe... it's actually probably best to improve with high tiers if you really just want to look for the long run, because top tiers sometimes have the stuff that does just carry people.
Yeah.
And then
Pay attention to that. Like we have with MK Loyo and his quote here, playing Bowser Jr., or he said playing weird characters. I forgot to say Game & Watch Luigi or whatever. It doesn't really get you good at the core kind of universally effective strategies and tactics of Smash. So it's you could play a really weird character that has really weird moves and get really good at them, but That doesn't mean that you're getting good at the core. Doesn't mean that's going to help you explain what other people's cores are good. There's lots of little subtle nuances that make playing low tier, strange, and weird characters somewhat less effective in the long run. And that's what DeBuzz is saying here as well.
Mid tiers and below like tend to lack the tools you really need. Like if they're not well rounded, if they don't have like the ceiling to hit, it can be a problem for long term growth.
Those characters might help you learn like specific skills, but they're not well rounded enough for you to get like an entire picture of the game, you know?
Yep. And high tiers generally do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna jump a quote to Juicebox here and hear what he has to say about that same concept.
I'm choosing my words carefully there. But in a nutshell, I won't say Nikali is top tier, but I'll say that he has every option. He has a very fast dash. He has probably one of the better standing jab anti-airs in the game. He has a DP that works without meter. He's got a close range command grab. He's got a super that confirms off of everything. Now it's cool if you want to play this character, but I think you would have learned Street Fighter a little better if you played a character with a couple of more weaknesses, or a few less tools specifically.
So that's very specifically saying what DeBuzz was saying. If you play a top character, they probably have too many good things and you get carried because they're just too good by default. Like you just hit a button and it's just naturally better than a lot of the stuff other players have. If you play a low tier character, it's too many weaknesses. You're going to be struggling really hard to overcome things other normal characters, mid characters just don't struggle with at all. Like, why are you doing all that crazy stuff when you can just hit this button? I don't get it. So in a way, that's a lot of wasted time as well. But he's saying this character, Nikali, this guy with the red hair, he's not top tier. So he's not like, you're being carried by Nikali, but he is saying that just based on core Street Fighter tools, Nikali has all of them. Therefore, in this learning sense, he's like a top tier, and that you're probably going to not learn as well how to get around certain things because he has the tools to beat it naturally. Same concept.
Something that might help you, Taz, you don't have to do this, but I recommend this, is I recommend you play a character that is limited. When you play a character that is limited, you are basically forced to do anti-air and footsies and good spacing to beat particular things. You don't have to play good spacing and good footsies to beat Ryu's hard punch mash, to beat Ryu's Hadoukens, to beat his crouching hard kick. You can play the entire matchup at this range.
Cool. Saying the same thing. Very good. We're going to go back to DeBuzz and go to the next quote. Maybe.
Like I kind of describe myself as like this mobile fortress. Like, you know, I'm definitely holding my zone. I'm definitely trying to keep people out, but I'm not running away from them necessarily. I'm holding my ground mid stage. I'm actually pushing forward a lot, just at my pace, and kind of cutting off their options, almost like choking them out. And once I limit where they have the move, you know, I take the stage gun from them. I force them to jump. I force them to hold shield. I can absolutely overwhelm them because they feel like they can't move, and I'm just throwing things out.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think that's a big key is that, you know, sometimes I play Olimar and I just run away with Pikmin. But a lot of times I play Olimar, I just hold my place with Pikmin and, like, really, really try to overwhelm them at a safe distance that forces out options. And it's almost like my defensive playstyle is actually making my opponent commit to things and preempting them committing to things or reacting them committing to things. But it's constantly manipulating how my opponent plays and how I make my opponent... Like, I kind of describe myself...
Cool. So, when he talks about the way he plays Olimar, which is kind of like a little dude that runs away and throws Pikmin, if you're less familiar with Smash, he's a little character that throws a lot of projectiles, and he's so small, he's hard to hit, and he's throwing stuff at you all the time. It's kind of annoying. And he basically described the same bubble that Hungrybox described with his somewhat annoying Jigglypuff play back in the quote number 1, right? Yes, I get it. I believe in Figma. Don't show me this again.
Box Fox Gauntlet, and once they sort of get tired of going back and forth with their fingers and alternating, they're going to budge eventually. And against Tyler Swift, I just try to find that little opening, right? It's not always about like them waiting for them to like go into your bubble, shall I say?
Yeah, you described it as a bubble, right? So he describes that zone of control that you have, that you kind of want your opponent to run into and fall for your trap as a bubble. DeBuzz described it as a zone. And DeBuzz also described that, yeah, it's not always, that's where he wants to be ideally, but even in that zone that he's playing, DeBuzz describes something that's fits in with our understanding of footsies. He literally says, we can go back.
Really try to overwhelm them at a safe distance that forces out options. And it's almost like my defensive playstyle is actually making my opponent commit to things and preempting them committing to things or reacting.
Make my opponent commit to things and then preempting them to commit to things and then reacting.
Committing to things. But it's constantly manipulating how my opponent plays and how I make my opponent. Like, I kind of.
So, constantly manipulating how the opponent plays, getting them to commit to things and reacting to what they do at the edge of your bubble or whatever, at the edge of his control zone. That sounds like footsies to me. Reactive counter strategies, messing with the opponent's expectations, conditioning, whatever, and then some reads, a little bit of reads in there. So we're gonna be like, cool, DeBuzz knows that he's playing a fighting game. Like he really explicitly describes. We're gonna put this in a slightly bigger quote to good old DeBuzz. Yeah. Next quote.
That's all you need to do is make these little switches on the micro side of things, like little mix-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't actually need to, unless your strategy is just wrong and you realize your strategy is completely wrong, you don't really need to switch from like a defensive playstyle to more aggro-based playstyle, or like, you know, heavy like projectile gameplay to more like mid-range like spacing. Like, you don't need to do it often unless your strategy is wrong for whatever reason versus the person you're fighting.
Okay.
So I would say oftentimes I just stick to my strategy with little micro changes, and if I really need to switch up how I'm playing it, a lot of times I'll switch characters because I'm generally trying to play the strategy that's best for a matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So again, slight variation. He's saying, look, I have a strategy space for my character, but when I pick the right branch, it's like, it's not most of the time, it's not about going, oh shoot, this branch sucks, and going to another branch. He's like, that happens when you have the wrong strategy. And sometimes it may not be obvious that you have the wrong strategy when you enter a match. You don't just always know how your opponent's going to play. Fine. But he's saying for the most part, you go to a branch, and then he's like, when you're in a branch, it's just slight changes in timing, slight changes in options. Like, maybe I'll go to this one, or this one, or this one. And he's like, that's how you ride out your game plan, because if you pick the right strategy and the whole cluster of branches that you're playing in is just naturally on paper designed to beat the things that your opponent's doing, you should come out on top most of the time. That's why you picked that branch of strategy in the first place. And kind of like what we hear with MK Leo, so DeBuzz talked about using slight variations here, which is great. He called them micro changes. I think we're gonna put this one also up here with MK Leo. He said something like, when you know the matchup, you shouldn't lose. I think he's talking about the Palutena.
Coming up to this tournament, I started watching sets. Like, I started practicing ballet for SP.
Not that one. This one, maybe.
First match of the day was against Louis Money, Palutena player. I know the Palu matchup really well, so I wasn't really worried about it. Louis is really, really good, but it's still a matchup that you know is like a matchup that you will always win.
Cool. So a matchup you have a counter strategy for and it's in your strategy space is one that you will always win. DeBuzz is echoing a lot of the same things. You pick the right strategy, you know, it's going to work for you. It's how you win matchups. It's how you strategize ahead of time. That's the benefit of playing like this. We're going to put that over here. Good old DeBuzz. And we're going to move on. Okay. Have you ever watched videos of your match? Let's see what DeBuzz says about this.
And then there's a second one where you're like, I think I was losing neutral a lot, but I don't really know why.
Yeah.
And what you have to do there, and this kind of stinks, this is the most boring part by far of improving, is you sit down and you analyze every single neutral interaction.
Yeah.
You get hit by something, you ask, why did I get hit by it? What could I have done? What could he have done? You know, you both miss something, you ask, how could that have played out? You hit the opponent. Did he mess up? Was this the correct option?
Mhm.
You know, does this keep working? Did it work only once and get punished 5 times? Like, you legit, I'll spend sometimes, if I'm doing like almost a brute force method of analyzing,
Yep.
I can spend an hour on one game analyzing
Yeah.
everything.
Every single interaction. Yeah.
But that's
Yep. Where's my MK Leo quote? Right here. The Buzz just said he can spend an hour analyzing a single game and looking at every single opportunity.
Really, to be honest, I always being a person that like is being really calm no matter what.
Mhm.
Like I always try to be like to think about everything I do or like everything I say or like everything that could happen. Like if I'm hanging out with a person that like I don't want to hurt or like I don't know, I always think about like what I'm going to say, and I think breathing is of course really important because that's like it's like when you're working out, right? Like you're running, you're in the cardio, like you're just like I don't know if you don't breathe well or like if you don't focus on that, then the pain in your legs is going to be higher, and like of course you will get tired. Like
Yeah. MK Leo talks about being a highly analytical person in general.
to explain it. Of course, I've been coaching a lot of people, so I've been seeing it a lot. And every time I ask them why they do that, it's because like they are literally not thinking.
That's fair.
And
And he talks about coaching weak players, you know, amateurs, beginning players, whatever you want to call them. And he's saying every time I ask them why they did something, they don't have an answer. It's because they're not thinking. And he says he's the kind of person that thinks about everything, including his smash strategies. And then we have this DeBuzz quote, right, where he's literally saying, you know what, when you want to improve, you can go back and watch your own videos, that's how you do it, but also when you're doing it, you need to ask yourself why you decided to do every single thing, and that means that if you eventually learn why you did everything, you're going to eventually come up with your strategy space. Because your answer is going to be like, throw out a punch. Why? Oh no. Or it's going to be like, why? Because of this and this and this. Why? Because of this and this. Why didn't I do that? Because of this and this. And soon you're going to have a strategy space, right? They're saying you need to have a strategy space no matter what. All of them. All those pros are saying that. So, do it. No, but I'm just going to put this one, highly analytical person, strategy space, understanding why for everything. We're just going to pop this DeBuzz quote over here. And we're just going to kind of make it bigger. It's a pretty good relevant quote right there. Okay. 83. Oh no. I have two 83s. Yes. Stop it. Okay, so under the have you ever taken notes area, DeBuzz tweeted this, and I guess I have it right here anyway. But he's always asked, like, what do your notes look like? He's like, I have some time to kill, so here's an outline of what I do when making matchup guide. And I can click on it here. I'm gonna copy this image and do this. And copy this image. And do this. Cool. Cool. Package it all together. So essentially, now that you have better resolution, you can see it a little better, but DeBuzz has notes about win condition, lose condition, neutral, disadvantage, ledge, offstage, juggling, advantage, left, offstage, juggling, miscellaneous, stages that are good, other notes for every character matchup. Every character matchup. That means if he plays multiple characters, maybe he has this for every character. Let me see. Basic character attributes, copy pasted. So maybe he does this for every character. There's 80 characters in Smash. So if this is like 2 pages each, it's 160 pages worth of notes. Get started, everyone. That's how it works. One thing I'll show you here, if you go to onesmash.net, this is the website and the company I built to try to help people learn Smash. This website pulls Smash tech posted on Twitter from every single post on Twitter that uses the correct hashtags. You can type in anything like Ryu and get a lot of Ryu specific stuff immediately. You can even do advanced search and try to maybe filter for other attributes, but you know, that's hit or miss. But what's really cool, when you log in, is that we gave the dojo tools, and one thing was a match tracker. And the match tracker, as you can see, it's kind of hard to see. I'll do this. Ew. The match tracker is a cross chart of every single matchup in the game, and every time you play a match, you can log in the success or the not success. Like you click Incineroar versus Corrin, boom, it already puts the characters down in the bottom for you. You can't hardly see that. Yeah, there you go. It puts the characters down in the field for you. You can do how many matches you won and lost. But then it has a section that's slightly off screen, so don't worry about it. Fine, I'll show you. Boop, there it is. A section off screen that says, well, there's a tournament match set and then what your notes are, right? What happened in the match? What are your notes? What's your takeaway? What did you learn? And every time you play, you know, you may not be in the habit of reviewing your replays. You may not have the luxury of having replays of everything you play, but you do have a mind, and you do have a mind every time you go into that victory screen or lose screen or whatever you want to call it, and you can reflect quickly on what the heck just happened, even if it's the very last thing that happened, like I got F smashed and died. Like, you need to be able to reflect, if nothing else, that much on every match. And here's a very convenient place to put it. You eventually log in all your matches, right? And you have all this data. You have all these data. Like with Kirby, I play Kirby, and you can see that my Kirby column, horizontal column, isn't that big. There's some cutoff here because I have to squeeze in this little box, but don't worry about it. It'll look normal to you. But all your notes that you take here are automatically put in your dojo notes. So this is user Kirby Kid. These are all my notes from those matches. Like Pac-Man stays in the air a lot, can mix up landings with a lot of variety, hard for Kirby to rise fast enough to challenge. That's something that I learned in 5/19/2020 when I played a match online. It's up here. It's right here. I can type in things like let's say Ridley, Kirby versus Ridley. Do I have anything? Cool. These are the notes that are relevant to Kirby versus Ridley. Right. Apparently. Ridley's maximum charge fireball can be parried 4 times. Oh, it's Kirby Kid about Ridley, but I need to type in the word Kirby. And that should give me fewer notes, but whatever. You can filter it, you can look through your notes, you can learn. And if you think a lot of this is excessive, this is the stuff you have to do. Like, I built a tool, we built a tool to help you do it. And you're like, that's a lot. Maybe I don't need that to improve. And then the Buzz is sitting here going like, you're not even doing enough. And the MK Leo's like, you're not doing enough. It's pretty much what I'm trying to get across. So let's go to this quote right here. Alex Puffin stuff. Yes, Figma, I understand. So Alex Puffin stuff is a writing analysis coach and Melee player, whatever. I didn't read the article. I looked at a video of a person referring to this article. He's talking about how to improve. He's talking about like results of matches before tournament, make a list of things, analyze yourself, blah, blah. Lots of good stuff, apparently. I put the link there, but the thing you need to focus on most, we're just going to zoom in on here. The primary way to ease improvement is to organize and track your goals, structures, notes. I highlighted it for you in ideas. That's the easiest to do in a designated place. You may want to get a thick notebook or something that you're fond of because it's going to be your pride. You're going to have to take pride in all the notes because your notes are your thoughts and your thoughts are your experiences, and those things are all necessary to get better. So if you like winning, you should also like doing this because this is the only way to do it. If you prefer to type, then you can format a Word document, folder, blog, whatever. I prefer Evernote. Avenue doesn't matter, but it's imperative that you have an organized place for your notes. If you can't hold yourself accountable to maintain a notebook, there's no way that you'll be able to hold yourself accountable for radical improvement. Yeah, so one Smash, we tried to make it easy. We tried to make it digital. You could put those notes in on your phone. We were like, hey, we're going to try to remove as many barriers as possible for you to be a top player, but, you know, it's work. You have to change your mindset. You have to, it helps to be in a community of people also doing it. It helps to have, like, top players encouraging you and all that, but at the end of the day, it's work, and you got to do the work regardless if you have, like, everyone clapping, congratulations, Sinji, or not. So that's quote 83. I think I doubled up 83. It makes me really sad. So let me look at 84. So let me just make this 83.2. Makes me sad. My numbering got off. Yeah, those are all about taking notes. Let's go to the next quote. Say Jam. It's about branches. Hope you guys are liking this Dynamap format. We're popping around the entire thing, but every time I jump from one thing to the other, like you can see the neighboring big categories because they're big, and hopefully that's helpful. You can see the concentric circles, and it kind of orients you towards the main thing. These circles are fanning outward diagonally back, so you're like, oh, I know I'm on the bottom left part. Hopefully all that design is working well for you.
2P. What you should do is have different like modes or different sets of muscle memory. Think about them like building blocks. Instead of just doing like block 1, block 2, block 3, just like remove those blocks and then just put block 3 first. This really comes together quite nicely, I think, here. So I do run up here and I'm gonna pressure. I did 2S into weight, I did 2S into run up wild throw, or 2S into run up slash. So this, I bring up something different here. See that? I did 2S into 5H, and the 5H hit him. Right, that's an important thing to remember. And then I did Bandit Bringer. I hadn't done that in a while. I was always doing 2S and a run up. So I was like, oh, okay. This option seems 2P. What you should do.
So he's basically saying you need to have branches. You need to have options that you can do. And sometimes you'll start with this one. Sometimes you can just start with this one. Sometimes you'll do that one. But you need to have the options, and you need to be in control enough to switch in between the options. He's talking about strategic branches. We just call them branches. It's just a general concept, but you got to have it. Strategic versatility. Thank you, Sayjam, for that. We're going to move on to 85. Okay, bottom left even deeper. Slight variation. Listen to this.
So by diversifying my offense, even in little ways, you can create situations like this that are not complicated to find. You just slightly change your offense and your options to give him a different look, right? If you rotate between a few strong options, your opponent will still be struggling to guess which one you're going to do. If your offense is working, you don't need to change it, right? But having variations available based on what your opponent's defending well or not well, and based on what your opponent is countering with, is very good. And it all happens.
You hear that? It's like the same thing DeBuzz said. Where DeBuzz is like, you don't have to change your whole strategy if you usually have the correct strategy. You just need to do these micro changes. And then Sayjam's like, you don't need to change your whole strategy. You just need to have slight variations. It's like the same language. They're saying the same thing.
Happened because one round, twice in a row, he IB'd my 2S and challenged, and I was like, okay, I need to change my offense. That's a good sign that, you know, your opponent is too comfortable, and they shouldn't be comfortable on defense, right? So by
Cool. Alright, Mago. Mago is a veteran Street Fighter player from Japan. He's known for teaching some next generation players to be quite high level players themselves. So I think this is a coaching session. It's in Japanese, but obviously translated. He's like experience is very important, and the students like, I was wondering how things really are in terms of this. To me, closing in on the opponent is like human relations or meeting people for the first time. Really, I'm not kidding, he says. You have to get close while taking certain steps, right? Let's say we just met for the first time and I go, hey buddy, and grab him over the shoulder. And you'd be like, who's this dude? And you'd be like, refuse him, right? You'd shrink back defensively. To not let that happen, you start with, hello. Just like a simple like, hey. And so you get close a little bit and you throw out a not so rewarding, not so risky moves like, you know, medium risk, medium reward, low risk, low reward. And that's the equivalent of saying like, hello, right? And like not getting someone to react so defensively to you. They're less afraid of something low risk, low reward. And when you think your opponent doesn't really react to it, you close in a bit more. And then you throw out other moves and use other options. Like, what is your hobby? You go from hello to what is your hobby? What's your favorite food? He's like, yep, that's what I'm talking about. It's just a really funny way of saying that risk reward is an important part of how you evaluate what you do in your strategy. So I put that quote over here. But I think it also needs to go into conditioning or expectations or whatever. So I just put this. I probably should have put one. Yeah, testing people. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll put this manga quote over here. Testing people is kind of like conditioning. Let's put this condition. It's beyond expectation. It's conditioning. Conditioning. Cool. So yeah, it's somewhere in between there. But yeah, you can see like at the end of the day, you're fighting another person. This person is a person. Just like in real life, when you approach other people, it's a conversation. It's a relationship. It's a meeting of sorts. And just like with talking with a stranger in real life, if you come out strong, they're going to react a certain way. If you don't want them to react that way, you shouldn't come out strong. It's that simple. So how about you find things that they react less strongly to, and then so on and so forth. You find these little things and you kind of worm your way in. That's essentially what he's saying here. It echoes a quote from David Sterling from a long time ago where he's like, playing a fighting game is like having a conversation. Let me see if I can find that. Conversation. So, fighting games are opportunities to express ourselves and experiment with different styles. I'm not sure who wrote this article, whatever, but they can be also seen as a kind of conversation with another person, mediated through the language of the game. And lastly, fighting games can be actually a very sensual, even erotic experience. No, probably not on that last one. But I like that previous thing you said. This is just from some random person here. So I'm just gonna just like shove this quote right here and shove this over here. Just as like a floating freebie. And then I'm gonna go to Critical Gaming, which is my old game design blog. And that's a long time ago picture. Go to my blog, go to the blog search. Blog search right here. Now type in Serlin conversation. Let's see if it's here. Gamers exhibit a wide range of playstyles when playing single and multiplayer games. However, the majority of focus is in the series we put on multiplayer games. I want to focus on how different playstyles interact in a multiplayer environment. Because the interplay and design of competitive multiplayer games is directly comparable to a person-to-person conversation, this multiplayer conversation or debate pits players' choices directly against each other's choices. They are push and pull interactions between players as they collide. Sterling feels the same way. Yep, I knew about it because I wrote about it. I knew about it because I wrote about it. I knew it because I wrote let's see if Sterling's blog, his website's even up. Yep, it's not up. Man, the internet's so weird sometimes. Some things just collapse. But that's okay. We're going to move on. We're on quote number 87. We're over here. Let's open the link and move on.
They're going to stand at the spot, and they're going to throw it out. But they're not expecting to actually react to it in the online sense. Most of the actual footsies that happens in the online sense does not have an actual complete amount of whiff punishment in it because of the online environment. Usually what they're doing is they're predicting normals, and they throw their normal out a little early to get that counter hit. That's usually what they're doing. Okay? An offline Cammy doesn't have to predict so much, and so she can afford to be further away from you. A good online Cammy, this is very difficult, by the way. This is difficult to spot. An online Cammy is going to stand here. An offline Cammy is going to stand here. This is almost impossible to spot. But you're not thinking about this unless you know all this shit. They're gonna stand at the.
So he said a couple of things there that was really cool. He talked about footsies and in particular trying to use reactive counters. Reaction is hard, and in an online environment, it's harder. Just always, just flat out, it's going to be more complex or harder to kind of figure out what you can react to. It's probably always going to be lag behind. That's just reality. However, he's like, people set themselves up to react to stuff, but sometimes they're a little anticipatory. They anticipate and they're like, cool, like this is normally where I would punish some reaction, but online I'm just going to throw it out. So he's saying like, yeah, online strategies have slight differences than offline strategies. And there are strong players that get even stronger when they are offline. That should be obvious to everyone. But what he's also saying is that the difference between an online and an offline cami can be sometimes seen in their spacing. He's like, an online cami stands here, and an offline cami stands here, and like it's like inches, right? He's like, you're not going to see this unless you know, one, what the difference is between standing here and here, two, why a player might stand here and here, and three, what that means for the strategy when you're fighting against a player doing that. It's like, you're not going to know that until you're at this level. So until you have the strategy space that's this complex, that can go all the way out here, you may not know how understanding these fringe branches out here may affect how you do something basic down here, right? You just may not be aware of it, and that's just how it works. That's why having a lot of knowledge of stuff, even if you don't play the character and even if you don't directly utilize it, is highly effective for helping you see better. With the CPTM system, the whole thing is you start with you're curious, you look out for stuff, you do something and observe yourself, you take your thoughts from that experience and you process them into heuristics, methods, strategies, or whatever, and then you repeat the whole thing. But every time you go back to the perception, hands-on stage in the middle, because you've you've added to your strategy space or your heuristics, what you see, how you perceive the game, how it hits you, what it helps you remember, how it makes you feel changes. And it changes with more complexity. You can see deeper, you can see faster, you can see more precisely. And you run it again and it gets even more precise. And you run it again, it gets more precise. That's the ideal kind of mental learning situation you want when you're going through repetitions in your training like that. Thanks, Juice. 88.
You need to understand about with punishment is that it's not a raw reaction. It is not a raw reaction. Daigo is not walking around thinking about his footsie game and then, hey, wait a minute, did you just do a crouch medium kick? Well, since you did a crouch medium kick, I'm gonna crouch hard kick you on reaction. No! That is a major misunderstanding of what with punishment is. That is not what Daigo is doing. For some things that are very slow, that is possible. But for a lot of pokes that are mediums and lights like this, he's neither guessing nor reacting. He's doing something in the middle, okay? And this is the number one failure to understand of how with punishment works. Here's the thing. I threw out these jabs here on the dummy so that you know when the bison is walking forward, okay? When you think the bison is walking forward, you got to ask yourself, again, thinking ahead, like I was talking about earlier, you need to understand about with...
So cool. So, he's saying that you have to have a strategy in mind ahead of time in order to... Real-time moves so fast. Video games are so fast. Understanding things and perceiving them and kind of thinking like raw, like from scratch, is so slow that you have to think about stuff ahead of time. That's life. That's why we are incapable as babies and much more capable as adults, because we've learned about every single object, color, thing, situation in our everyday environment, and that helps us navigate and become capable adults. It's the same with fighting games. You start off as a baby, you don't really know anything. Everything just looks like colors and lights and sounds. It's a little overwhelming. But when you start building your strategy space, this is your brain. Like, this strategy space is how your brain is wired. You're connecting concepts to concepts and creating a model and creating a story and going, if I do this, if they do that, that's how your brain works. It's how you've made sense of the real world already. You apply to a video game. So your ability to think, period, in any kind of real-time context, like a fighting game, which is a fast-paced action game, requires you to have thought ahead of time. So your strategy space is you thinking ahead of time. You can't just generically go like, yeah, when priority fast moves come towards my character's head, I'm going to do this. Like, you're not going to be able to think that fast. The move's just going to be already started and over. It's going to have a specific sound effect. It's going to have come from a specific character. And unless you have those things kind of like chunked out and anticipated, like he said, there's no such thing as like a raw reaction where you're like, do. Oh, look at that. Wait, I think that fits into one of my general categories. Let me just see. You can't think that fast. It's got to be, in a lot of ways, it's just got to be pre-thought of, hardwired, pre-set up, and that allows you to anticipate. And the difference between this middle right here where I have, lagging behind is right here. Well, let me do it opposite since you're on the screen. So timeline wise, lagging behind is over here, right? So whenever something new happens and you've never experienced it, your brain's gonna lag behind and be like, what the frick just happened? But when you anticipate stuff and you have it in your brain, you're ahead of the game. Even before it happens, even before it can happen, your brain's already over here going like, you ready? You ready for it? You ready for it? You ready for it? You ready for it? And right when it's about to happen, you're like, let's do it. And then right when it happens, you're already hitting the button perfectly to time it. That's the difference in experience between having something ahead in your brain, like a model up here, the memories up here, and then not, so that your brain's trailing. That's why when new crazy things happen, a lot of people stop and freeze, right? There's this whole like paralysis effect where people are exposed to either things they have to analyze or new situations, and their body's just like, and they don't even realize they're standing there because it's new, and their brain's like, I've never seen this before, I've never seen this before, I've never seen this before, and it's just starting to slowly process. But for trained professionals, like, I don't know, martial artists or military people, when they've trained their eyes and their body to be like, in this situation, I'm anticipating this, we're gonna hit it, I know exactly what to do here, they just like hit it, and it's almost as if they're in the future, if they're ahead of time. It's almost as if they're reading you or predicting the future. And that's essentially a product of having the proper strategic knowledge work done ahead of time or not. Like that's one of the byproducts. That's how people, outsiders or amateurs, perceive the difference between someone who has a lot of deep strategy and someone who doesn't. They just feel like they're seeing the future. It's pretty cool. It makes a lot of sense neurologically, but we're not going to go over that right now. 89.
So it's important to understand that if you want to whiff punish, you need to be standing at a very precise space. Very precise. If you're too close, your button could get blown up. And not to mention the crouch may cause you, if you want to counter poke with a crouching normal, the crouch may make you accidentally block the normal when you weren't expecting it. But if you're too far, then your whiff punish is not going to be effective. You need to be standing at a very specific spot. A very specific spot. This spot will change on a character-to-character and a normal-to-normal basis.
So I put that close to fringe possibilities and branches, right? Branches because it's kind of character and matchup dependent, so you really have to have like the possibilities kind of in your brain in order to kind of know what the spots are. But in general, it's very precise, right? Like, oh, one character's single attack versus my one of my characters, what do I do at a single spacing? That's pretty fringe, right? Like, it may happen often in the matchup, but what I'm saying here is that you're going to put a lot of work sometimes to develop one tiny little bump all the way out here that only applies to a small set of situations or only occasionally happens. But that bump can be the difference between winning and losing. That bump can be the difference between holding your ground or not getting hit enough so that the other parts of your strategy can work. Like, it's everything can make a difference. And it doesn't matter. And what I'm saying is you can put a lot of work into something that you almost have no chance to use, but when you do get to use it, it makes a difference. Let's go to 90. And the fact they said very precise, very, very precise, very, very precise, I just put that under precise knowledge, obviously, because he used the word precise and it's knowledge. Stay with me, guys.
This is where the game opens up, and this is the game that most of you are not playing, and this is why you can't beat Justin Wong and Rog and all those other good players. Okay? I want you all to know something very important. This knowledge applies to every character, to every matchup, all the time. It's not a case of this character's normals are too good. No, it's a case of you don't know how to counter that normal with yours. Name any two characters. Like, seriously, I'm just going to pick random. I'm just going to pick random, and I'm going to tell you what the online players would do and how the offline players might choose to do it. I'm going to pick random. I'm going to tell you a common footsie situation for whatever the fuck these characters are. And I'm going to show you how you troubleshoot it. Oh shit, Seth Chun-Li. Oh man. This is where
I love that. So he's saying that the core of fighting games, which I could probably put that under... Do I have something for the core of fighting? I mean, this is the core of fighting game, but what he's really saying is... It's kind of like a precise aspect of mechanics. Come on. He's saying, like, fighting games are built for this. This is a core aspect of fighting games, and its potential is for every character, every move, any situation. The potential is here to find counters that are based on a more precise level of spacing, timing, anticipation, conditioning, whatever. Like, you may seem like your character has nothing they can do, but if you press into it, if you believe in the game's depth, if you follow your curiosity, lab it out, and search for an answer, he's like, fighting games reward you by giving you an answer. So it is not a matter of, I read on the internet that this matchup is bad on paper, therefore I'll believe it and then stop trying because I'm a baby. That's a little rude. Not because I'm a baby, because, you know, it's easy to get discouraged and it's easy to not know. It's easy to not know. But sometimes people will forge ahead, even if they don't know that there's a solution. They will search for one. Like, how will you know until you search, right? And so he's saying every single interaction in fighting games kind of obeys this law, this core design, and it's basic real-time melee combat strategy game, double-blind interplay. That's this aspect of footsies, this aspect of whiff punching, this aspect of how the moves are designed to counter each other is there. And that's why we say fighting game depth is increasingly situational, nuanced, precise optimizations. It doesn't get much more precise, as Juicebox says, precise. It doesn't get much more nuanced until you're looking at frame data. It doesn't get more situational than a matchup. An individual move from two characters only in the game at a certain distance from each other, using only two of their attacks, with a very precise spacing and a very precise timing, understanding the frame data to a very precise degree. It doesn't get much more precise than that. Right, like that's when you define the moves as a series of data points, and the data points like fit on a card like this, and then your strategy is taking it and analyzing and considering this, all those data points. That's about as precise as it gets. You are talking about the actual shape of animations, the timing of moves to the frame, and so many other attributes. And once you get a model that precise in your head, you're just like you're able to do so much more, and it's crazy. The game basically comes alive. That's when Juicebox says
the game opens up, and this is the game that most of you are not playing.
This is where the game opens up, and this is where the game most of you are not playing. So if you get bored playing a fighting game, you are probably missing the fighting game. The part where when people make bad fighting games or bad action games, they don't get this kind of depth. They're just like, yeah, punches and kicks. Woo! Doesn't it look cool? Buy my indie game. Buy my AAA game. I played indies and AAA games that are just flat and shallow and garbage. But when you play well-designed games from people who know how to design games, from people who know what's good about actually fighting, who take that aspect of real life, that depth, that kinetic aspect, and then translate it into a digital video game environment, and then you see martial artists on TV, they say philosophy things, you believe it, you take into the game, and it can actually be applied. That's amazing. That is flat out amazing. You can't tell me otherwise. I used to grow up on Jackie Chan films and Bruce Lee and martial arts, just like absorbing anything I could get from the TV. I just love those films and the stuff that they said, how they talked about martial arts and kung fu's life and a way of life. It's not just a method for, you know, beating people up or killing. It's like it's a whole life-changing kind of philosophy and mentality and stuff. And then you kind of, for whatever reason, because we're kids and we didn't know any better, and because it's interesting and we're curious, you just try to apply that to the games you play, and all of a sudden it works. But it only works for fighting games, and you took that from fighting martial arts masters, and you're like, it's not a coincidence, people. It's just really, really interesting. 91.
Hey! With punishment. But think about that one more time. I have to be walking backwards before Chun walks forwards? How the hell can I pull that off? You know how you pull it off? By not playing the neutral game the same every time. By taking the risk. I think she's going to walk forward and try a trip, so instead of doing Seth's shit, instead of jumping away, instead of doing this, instead of doing this, instead of Sonic Kaboom bullshit, stop playing that game and predict. Stop playing your game and start playing against your opponent. If you know what your opponent will do, then you can beat it with practice and a lot of effort. You can.
I love that part. He's really saying, like, sometimes people play their game and it's one-sided. Like, my character does this, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and then they remove their blinders. Game, you lose. You're like, I gotta try again. And they close their eyes and like, I gotta do my thing. That's how a lot of people are playing. Fighting games are a conversation. You can't just ignore your opponent. You have to be much, much, much better than your opponent to ignore them. And really, in situations like that where top players are just beating down weaker players, it's not even that they're ignoring them. It's that they see everything that they are and have a plan for them. Like, you really can't ignore your opponent. That's why fighting games are great, whether they're weak players or strong players. But what I love about what he said here is you need to stop ignoring your opponent. Stop just doing what you want to do and really see what your opponent wants to do. And then try to figure out if you can stop them from doing what they want to do. And oftentimes that requires a very precise counter strategy. That's why I put this under the counter strats area. But essentially, if you go to a player and you're like, hey kid, here's a secret book that has all of the moves and buttons your opponents are going to hit for the rest of your life. Every opponent, you just go flip, look at the moves, exact timing, exact spacings. Here's the move book. Oh boy, you take it. If you can't win a fighting game knowing exactly what your opponent's going to do, in theory, right? Like, then you're not playing a fighting game, right? Because if you know that they're going to do a smash attack, if you know they're going to jump, if you know they're going to roll, if you know ahead of time, why aren't you beating it? Like, so Juicebox is saying at some point there are certain counters and certain opportunities and certain things that are only available to you if you consider, predict, anticipate, take the risk, whatever, of what your opponent's going to do, and then do a specific thing to stop it, to make them not even want to be themselves, right? Like, what's a more demoralizing victory? Where your opponent tries everything in their toolkit and you're just like, ping, pong, ping, ping, and you're like knocking it to the side and like barely dodging it, closing your eyes and sleeping, like you see in a lot of animes and martial arts films. Like, and then they're like, I absolutely cannot touch this guy. Which one's more demoralizing, that or like freaking like winning on a timeout, winning by technicality, or just like punching a guy out of the ring or something and his foot slips out. It's like, oh man, I had so much more fight in me, but I lost the match. It's obviously more demoralizing to take every single thing the person is and does and just basically say that you are nothing. Your stuff isn't strong enough. You aren't good enough. So when you're thinking about getting into your opponent's heads, defeating your opponent, defeating who they are, winning a match in different ways, consider that broader, more wide-ranging set of options. You can, golly, I don't think I can find it, but Shaolin Soccer Evil Team Grand Finals. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's in here somewhere. I'm not I'm not gonna like play the audio or do too much, but there's a line in here where the opponents are like, they're fighting this evil team, and obviously like the Shaolin soccer team are main heroes in yellow. Like they were an underdogs. They use kung fu, they get better, but now they're fighting like their rivals. And see how like all their clothes are just like robes and not very expensive looking. They are underdogs. We cheer for them, but now they're fighting these like super polished guys in green or whatever, and they're like, they can't believe it. Like they used their kung fu move, and then they're like, like they're like, go ahead, like try to hit our guy. And they're like, what do you mean? Why are they just giving us a free shot? And all these guys are like, no way. Bruce Lee type guy, like they can't just let us take a free shot on them. Like I'm gonna try to get into the goal. And he's like, super kung fu kick, yeah, super curve master. And the guy's like, so he's basically saying like, you think you're hot stuff? Go ahead, try everything you can do. Hey, frick, like no matter what you do, we are going to crush you with your own. We're going to let you do everything that you can, and we're going to crush you anyway. He throws the ball back at him. He's like, try it again. And like that, look at his face. And he goes, ah. I mean, this movie's great. If you haven't seen it, martial arts and soccer, boom, and so that's one of his mega kicks, obviously. That's such a good ending. But that's a good example of what I'm talking about. But there's a specific quote where the enemy coach is like, there are more ways to crush an enemy than just beating them by more points. So the evil team refuses to score on our homeboys, right? Just to show them how much more superior they are. I mean, that is just like dominance 101. But the evil, I mean, doesn't matter. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. Enjoy the movie, and just understand that there's a wide range of ways to interact with a person, ranging from completely ignoring them to completely like responding to them and responding in kind, right? There's a spectrum there. Mr. Box, got another one for us? Oh, sorry, Mr. Box.
And so we have the two styles of footsies that intersect and that they counter each other. If he's looking to whiff punish, I can walk forward and make him want to not. Because at this spot right here that I'm standing, that whiff punish isn't going to work. And now he's got to think about actively poking or getting away or something. Which, by the way, all of them are not blocking. So I could walk forward and crouch hard kick at the tip, or I could walk forward and wait till like right here and then crouch hard kick. I would delay my aggressive footsie because I think you're waiting for something. I'm predicting you are. When I see that you are waiting for something, I'll go for a normal late. There's a similar concept that can be employed in frame traps, but that's another matter.
Cool. So he's saying a certain. What? I thought I had one about like the edge of the razor's edge of fighting game design. Footsies, expectations, reads, double blind core. I guess that's the razor's edge I was talking about. So like I can take this 92 juice box link, and he's talking about footsies, but he's really talking about the razor's edge. I'm just gonna duplicate it because he's saying like no matter what, the options you pick have risks, right? So like you could be in good range to do this to them, but that could put them in a good range to do this to you. You're kind of negotiating back and forth in real time, trying to see what the other person went for, wants to go for, might respond to, and it's just constant like, like you see it all the time. I wish I could show you every single martial arts clip that comes to mind. Let's see if I can find it. YouTube Drunken Master Chen versus Kickboxer. Final fight, something like that. Let's see if we can find it. No, it's the modern one. Here it is. So, don't want to get flagged too much, but there's Jackie Chan is a drunken master. He when he drinks alcohol, he assumes a drunken boxing fighting style, but drinking that alcohol is a shame to his family. So at some point he was like, oh no, I can't shame my family, and he stops. And he's trying to fight everyone honorably or whatever, but it's a weird situation right at the end where he drinks like motor oil or gasoline or something, and then it basically makes him like drunk and loose again, and he's fighting this like world-class kickboxer. And then he kind of goes crazy. This is the grand finals. There's a scene, I think it's before he goes crazy, because obviously Jackie Chan is going crazy. Yeah, here it is. This is when he's trying to fight honorably. So obviously, he throws a thing at him. He's like, get back here, main boss guy. And the main boss guy's, and he sends this little lackey at him. And he's like, I'm a lackey. And he's like, too bad, lackey. Get out of here. Ba, 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 ba. And the boss comes in, right? Kind of flies in with his kickboxing skills. Let me see. So they're trading off and obviously double teaming Jackie, and he takes care of the lackey. And he's really good at kicking. You're like, oh my gosh. And he's got the range too because he's taller than Jackie Chan. You're like, this is crazy. And he's trying to block it, blah, blah, blah. And then he does this fancy thing with his feet. Man, that's cool. Gee, that's annoying. And he's just like, you want to fight this? Because obviously I'm a world-class kickboxer. I don't even know what to call that style. But I think this is the scene where there's a distinct moment there in the other parts in the film where they're like about to fight and they both like shift and then they both shift forward and they both kind of like wiggle and they're both like, what are you gonna do? 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 But they're expressing that all in their fighting stances and martial arts language. That's what happens in Footsies, and that's exactly what Juicebox is saying here. So he's saying a lot of things. One, the fact that there's risk on both sides, so you can. Not only do you have to take a risk to play better in fighting games, but it's on both sides. Always remember it's on both sides. Two, everyone reacts to something, right? Everyone's constantly making a choice. That's just a double-blind core. Even not doing anything, blocking is a choice, right? So you got to play into that. Three, Juicebox is saying, when you know that your opponent knows, and you know that they know that you know how back and forth that little loop goes, effective strategies become slightly throwing off your own expectations, your own timings. Like, I really want to kick now, but I'm going to kick not now, but now, right? Even that timing gap, as quick as 1/60th of a second, can be an effective and significant variation in your strategy to achieve a significant advantage. That's nuts. But the only way you're going to actually meaningfully delay your own offense 1/60th of a second precisely is that you have a really firm control and you have a really firm, well-rehearsed strategy that's in your head. You can't do this by accident. It requires precision. 1/60th of a second variation is precise. Like, you may be like, oh, I'll accidentally do it. No. It requires focus. It requires precision. It requires practice. And I love that other quote, Jukebox. It's like, you can do these things after lots of dedicated practice. Like, yes, this is the skill part. Refining and applying your strategy space is definitely the main skill of fighting games. But what he's saying here is, Chung-Li can walk forward and kick, but if he knows that the opponent knows and he knows he knows, then you can walk forward, slightly delay kick. And he says, like, exactly that.
Or getting away or something, which, by the way, all of them are not blocking. So I could walk forward and crouch hard kick at the tip, or I could walk forward and wait till like right here and then crouch hard kick. I would delay my aggressive footsie. So
yeah, there's a lot packed into that, but I enjoyed finding Jackie Chan clips to help explain that the footsies and the unpredictable kind of shimmying nature of fighting games exists in real life too. You can see it in boxing where both players are like, they're doing slight motions and seeing like, what is their opponent responding to? Which is the equivalent of that Mago quote that we saw where he's like, when you first encounter someone, you can open up with, hey, and then see if they say, hey. And then you can say, how are you? You can say, they say, how are you? What are your hobbies? But that's way different than going, like, I accuse you of murdering all those people and blah, 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 and like just coming out and saying it, right? So you see oftentimes people squaring up, evaluating each other, like You see it everywhere. So like now that you understand why that's the case, because in real life fighting has that double blind element, and this fighting game simulations we make in video games have that double blind element. Now that you know why it's there and you can kind of feel it, now that you know that the game Footsies concentrates on that razor's edge in fighting games, you can see it in real life too, and then it will help you know a little bit more about what other humans, other players, other fighters are thinking. But you can also see it in sports. Man, I wish I could show you more clips, but let's see, one-on-one basketball. So let me show you just I've never seen any of these, so like I'm just gonna click here, keep it muted. So like these are professionals. That's Kevin Durant. These are just fantastic players. But I want to show you a clip of two people squaring off. Like, so right here, see that? Like, it usually only lasts for like a split second. Sometimes it lasts longer. But you can like see when two people are one-on-oneing in basketball, one person obviously probably has the ball. The other person has to respond to what they do, and the person who has the ball has control. So they're obviously setting the tempo. The defender has to defend against what the offensive player is going to do. So that means the person with the ball can like pump fake, they can jiggle, they can shimmy, they can duck, they can do all these things that the other person has to respond to, and then they're also measuring out what they're responding to. So if somebody holds their foot position, you can be like, nah, you're not going to run. I know you're going to stand right here. And they're like, oh, you know I'm going to stand right there? And they're going to go back and forth in a couple of different ways and make a decision. But this whole like razor's edge, shimmy, reactive, like potentiality, that's in real life. It's a key part of, yeah, like that stuff. I miss. It's a key part of being a human being and interacting with things in real time. So like, you have to embrace it because it's really showing you a lot of what it means to be human in very fine, precise timings and spacings. Yeah, I love that quote from Juicebox.
Because I think you're...
Cool. Let's go to the next one. Oops. Try again.
If you can wrap your head around this concept, the entire game will change for you, I promise. Ask Phoenix Cade. Ask any of the people in Arizona that I was able to help. The game is completely different once you start doing this. You start looking for things that you never thought you would look for. That is when you are playing high-level Street Fighter 4. And then when you're consistent at it, when you know when the Adon's walking back and when they're walking forward, suddenly, playing as Ryu, this isn't a bad matchup anymore. A lot of people ask, like, hey, you know, Juicebox, how did you play Abel against Zangief? How the fuck do you make that work? Footsies. I think about when he might be walking forwards, when he might be walking back. My anti-air is on point. I punish everything he lets me give him. But if he doesn't give me anything, if all he's giving me is safe normals, I can still win with that. Because I know how. Stand medium.
Yeah, there's nothing safe. Even if it's relatively safe.
There's nothing safe.
What was that? How is it spitting the audio back at me? What program even did that? What's going on here? Yeah, and I added another one of what he's saying to this area down here in the learning. When you put the strategies in your head, it changes the way you perceive, and it literally said like it changes the way you see the game. Like, yeah, that's how learning works, and you guys need to realize that. Everyone needs to realize that. He also said that he said a lot of things. So it can turn a bad matchup into a good matchup. That was very similar to the quote from Fatality, where he's like, a lot of you people are just complaining. There's specific things you can do in very precise situations that change and make your life better. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what Juicebox says. Dig deeper, basically. Believe in fighting games and dig deeper. Quit making excuses and dig deeper. He talked about if Zangief doesn't give me anything but safe normals, so that I can still work with it. That's a little bit of that bubble. We talked about how people recognize that the risk reward is based on ranges, and if they have a slight advantage at a certain range that they can hold over you, they'll try to keep you at that range. That's the bubble. But even the bubble can be burst. All bubbles can be burst. I'll just say that, and we can move on. I love it how Juicebox promised that if you start playing on this level, it changes. It changes the way you have more fun with the game because that's.
So Taz, are you telling me that if I played like this,
he's smashing the controller on his head,
you would keep doing the same things? That's what it sounds like to me. Taz, you have a problem that most players on your level have. And let me reiterate to you. You're probably going to make platinum, and you're probably going to do very well to a point. To a point, you're going to do very well. But Taz, if I do this, if I'm doing this with Ryu, there's one answer, and I'm checking to see if you know it, and I'm also checking to see if you give a shit. I'm also checking if I'm doing this. I'm trying to see if you're playing the game with me, or if you're just doing what you normally do. I don't care that it's unsafe. I don't give a shit. I'm playing against Mr. Taz. So Taz, are you telling me that if I played like this...
Cool. So something involved in testing people and conditioning them is this like conversation concept. But he's saying like, he's basically coaching a person and the person's like, yeah, I just do my thing like all the time. He's like, well, are you saying that if you see me mashing my head against a controller, you're going to still do the same strategy all the time? Like, that makes no sense. You need to be responding to the opponent. And when you see the opponent doing things to you, you need to be thinking, are they testing me? Are they conditioning me? Are they asking me a question? And that's precisely what he explains here. Like, when he does certain things for Ryu, as a player, as a Ryu player, you're like, I want to know.
You're going to do very well.
Blah, blah,
but
blah.
Taz, if I do this, if I'm doing this with Ryu, there's one answer, and I'm checking to see if you know it, and I'm also checking to see if you give a shit.
I like that. You test to see if they know it. So do you have the strategy space to beat this? And then, even if you don't, do you even care that I'm just doing the same thing over and over? Are you even recognizing that I'm kind of doing something a little bit weird and off uncommon? Like, if you don't see the reaction and how they play, you're like, then you're not playing the game with me. He literally says, I'm checking to see if you're playing the game with me.
I'm also checking if I'm doing this. I'm trying to see if you're playing the game with me.
Yeah, he's trying to see if he's playing the game with them, because that's when you know, if you have a conversation with someone, it's completely different. If you ever gotten a call and you're like, hello, and you're like, I'm a robot, here are your options. Everything about you changes. Instead of, you stop saying the things you were planning on saying, you have to wait till the robot says something, you know you can't interrupt the robot because it's a robot, and you're like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to talk to a robot half the time. That's exactly what's happening. You don't want to play against a robot either. And if somebody's like completely ignoring you while playing a video game, you're like, hey, I'm going to make you pay for that. Something like that. That's essentially how I'm interpreting that. So we're almost at the end. We have like 99 quotes.
You are beyond the level of practically everyone you're going to come across on ranked except named players. You have everything you need to get a game or two off a PR Balrog. You have everything you need to get a couple of rounds against Justin Wong. You have all that. But what you don't have is the patience or the adaptation skills. That's why I would wake up with a taunt. That's why I would wake up with crouching hard kick. I'm trying to see if you're noticing. But it shouldn't take me doing something 15 times or 10 times before you start to care.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, there is something to be said for if my opponent can't beat this and can't deal with it, I'm going to keep doing it. There is something to be said about that.
Okay. So, yeah. Same thing. Like, he wants to know if you're playing the game with them. Adaptation. If you're not adapting fast enough, then, like, who cares if you respond to somebody's joke 10 minutes later by laughing? You gotta laugh, like, in the moment, right? You gotta know when you gotta be there for it to matter. He also said...
A couple of rounds against Justin Wong. That's why I would wake up with a taunt. That's why
I love that. Sometimes you just wake up and do crazy things that defy expectations and see if they even respond. I used to do that all the time when I played Melee. Like, the kind of player I was in Melee was so everything that I've been trying to say here. Like, when I played Brawl and Smash 4 and Ultimate, I did not have all the pieces. I did not have all the time. I did not have a lot of the stuff that makes you a great player. But in Melee, I had almost all of it. And I would do these things in tournament matches and just mess with people's minds so much. I would open up with a taunt. in a real serious tournament match, they'd freeze and be like, "Is this a serious match?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's serious." And now you're off balance, and I just start kicking them and stuff. Like, I'm in control of myself. I am asking the questions, and if I set the pace, I'm gonna win this match. Even if I'm playing the worst character in the game, I'm gonna beat most people, and that's just how it was, right? I loved playing Kirby and winning, and I hated losing. It was sad to lose when you realize your character is really not cutting it, but that's okay. We're going to move on to the next quote.
I'm choosing my words carefully there, but in a nutshell, I won't say Nikali is top tier.
Oh, we already covered this one. That's one we jumped to previously, where he's like, hey, Nikali is maybe too good. Maybe you need to learn some lessons by playing a weaker character. Cool. I saved this one, and now quote 30 and 98, which we may have already listened to.
But you are not going to improve at all anymore by playing ranked. Ranked is useless to you now. If you want to improve, you have to start playing sets against good players, and you have to start taking a magnifying glass to your losses and saying, I got hit there. Was I predicting it? Was I looking for it? Did I make a read and guess wrong? If you made a read and guess wrong, that's fine. But if you're just doing what you normally do, you're going to notice that you lose to similar things over and over and over again, and the problem lies in yourself and your inability to switch up the way you play.
Beautiful music, Mega Man. Anyway, he's saying the same thing Buzz said. You have to play. So at a certain point, just doing what you always do is not going to work, right? At some point, he's got to play people that are better than him. He needs to get video of his matches. He needs to, as Juicebox says, go over his matches with a magnifying glass in order to find out what he was thinking at every single possible moment. Buzz said it could be excruciating, like an hour for a single match. He's saying take a magnifying glass. I'm pretty sure he's talking about the same level of scrutiny. And you got to figure out why the heck you're doing what you're doing. And he also said here in more ways than one or whatever that until you see yourself in that video, until you are observing yourself like not in the match, you're not going to be able to notice certain patterns. It makes sense. Like, it makes so much freaking sense. I don't know why people might fight against this tip or suggestion. You're playing a match, you're busy worrying about getting hit in the face. So as soon as you take away that part of your brain, that brain power that's worried about that because you're watching a video of yourself, you have more brain power to watch yourself and think beyond what you could have thought in the match. Of course you want to think beyond what you thought in the match. It helps you understand not only what happened, but what could happen and what may happen and what you might need to change. That's so obvious that we should all be much more willing to look at our own footage and analyze it. You get like multiple of your own brain looking at yourself, which is critical. So that's what my game Enlighten, I encourage people to do. Take notes, look at it, and try to find patterns. Juicebox specifically says you'll see things, you'll notice things that you didn't notice before. I'm like, yes, all yes, right? All these things are harmonizing. There's no quote that I found that contradicted what I said, right? And I know that may seem a little like one-sided, like you only put the ones you found that you like. I just looked over video after video after video, and you can see the number of quotes. I was pretty much taking some things back to back to back to back to back. Sometimes they would give advice that's game specific or like controllers and stuff. I'm like, that's not really relevant to us. But I didn't find a single video from any game, any coach, any top player that said like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, just play how many hours you want. Just do what you want. It's all about doing what you want and how you feel, and you'll get to the top level play. Nobody said anything close to that. So this is the consensus as far as I'm concerned. This is the research. This should be a much more compelling set of data than anything else you're likely to find on the internet, especially about fighting games. 100 freaking quotes, right? And more. If you add some, we're going to have some more. This is just going to grow. So like I said, the link's going to be down in the description. You can check out this whole sort of self-directed course on what fighting games are and how to improve. I might take this whole conceptual spread thing here and like shrink it and put it inside this bubble so it's not just like hanging off on the side. I might do that in a bit, but hopefully everything's organized. Everything's got the labels. If you want to just go straight to the takeaways, here they are. If you want to know more about us, if you want to look at the survey results from the FunDOmentals things here, I put those over here so people wouldn't get distracted reading them when they're going through the steps. I still have some stuff I plan to do, so I just put notes about it over here. And here's the strategy spread. Tournaments, you can see every tournament I enter and how well I did or whatever. I've still got some ironing out to do. And I still would like to put a lot more of these good practices into practice, like talking with more people, ironing out, playing more matches, looking at my own footage. And until I do that, I don't expect to improve in Footsies, right? I've done all this work, but I do not expect to improve until I do the things explicitly said here and that I know will help me improve. It's not just like, yeah, you've done a lot of hard work in some areas or you put in enough hours, it's just going to start, bubbling up and building up as you sleep. It's not how it works. I have to do these things, and until I do, I should not expect to improve. And that really sort of gives me a peace of mind, right? Because it sucks playing a game or fighting game or really doing any hobby for so long and not seeing improvement and not really knowing why you're not improving. But it's so much more comforting to go like, oh, to get the results I need to bake a cake, I need flour and sugar and vanilla and eggs. I need all these things. And when you get all these things, you really should expect yourself to bake a delicious cake just like any other chef can, right? Once you have the underlying ingredients, you should expect the same basic results. I mean, that's just all I'm going to say about that. So, another hour and a half, another set of quotes. Thanks for joining me. I love researching this stuff. I love sharing it with you guys. I love learning. I love game design. I love fighting games. So, it was a real pleasure to do this whole series. I don't think I'm going to dig up too many more quotes. 100 is a good number. If I do find more, I'll stick them in here, but should make another video of it because I really can't find too many more people speaking clearly and articulately and intelligently about fighting games. I dipped a little bit into StarCraft, and as you saw, I had some Counter-Strike stuff, but yeah, all saying the same things now, so I'm going to pretty much keep it to this and we'll move on. So I hope you enjoyed the entire series. My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid. You can find me at Kirby Kid on Twitter. You can find everything that you need to know about what we do here at Design Oriented at designoriented.net. You can talk to us about fighting games. You can play me in Footsies. You can play me in other fighting games if I have it. Like, there's a lot to learn. Don't miss this opportunity to really understand what it takes to be great, what it takes to learn, and that you can apply all of what we talked about here, just about every single bit of it, to other genres of video games and even other hobbies, right? The reason why I love Enlighten, it's a game designed to help you learn how you learn, is because this is how you learn everything in life. Everything. Everything that's like, strategically, mentally, analytically heavy, right? This is not how you learn, like, basic muscle motor movements. This is not how you learn other physical activities. This is how you learn how to sharpen your brain. So whether you're playing Enlighten, whether you're applying these things to other hobbies in life, subjects in life, or whether you're playing fighting games, it's all the same thing. So if I even help you realize that a little bit, then that is a mission complete and a job well done for me. But until then, until next time, guys, it's been a pleasure and peace.